Introduction to Self-Love and Mindfulness. To attract the divine essence of love into your life, it's important to start by understanding that love is not something external, it is something that resides within. This is a core teaching in Buddhism, the truth that we are already complete, already worthy of love. We often seek outside validation, forgetting that the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. To begin, we must first cultivate mindfulness and awareness. As the Buddha taught, you, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Personal story of finding self-love. There was a time, not long ago, when I found myself tangled in the suffocating grip of self-doubt. I was drowning in a sea of past mistakes, feeling as though I was undeserving of love or happiness. Every misstep, every regret seemed to echo in my mind, convincing me that I was unworthy of anything good. The heavy weight of these thoughts made it hard to breathe. And in those moments, I felt lost. It was as if I were standing outside the flow of life, watching others receive love and kindness, but never feeling as if it could be extended to me. But as the Buddha teaches, suffering is universal, and the path to freedom from suffering lies within. In that time of darkness, I turned to the profound wisdom of his teachings. One phrase in particular resonated deeply within me: you, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. It was a simple truth, yet it felt revolutionary. Here I was, seeking love from others, seeking validation from the outside world, when the truth was I had been ignoring the most essential love of all, the love that was waiting quietly inside of me, patiently waiting to be acknowledged. At that moment, I decided to begin my journey inward. I began practicing meditation. But not just any meditation. This was a meditation focused on self-compassion, a concept the Buddha spoke of often. In one of these sessions, I imagined myself enveloped in a warm, golden light. A light so gentle and loving that it felt as though it was melting all the walls I had built around myself. I pictured this light surrounding me, filling the empty spaces in my heart, the places where I had buried all my shame, guilt, and fear. With each breath, I allowed this light to grow stronger, filling every part of me, soothing my wounds, and reminding me that I was worthy of love, not because of anything I had done or failed to do, but simply because I existed. The more I allowed this light to flow, the more I realized that love was not something I had to chase or earn. It was always there, always within me, waiting to be embraced. I had been so focused on what I lacked, on my perceived imperfections, that I failed to see the inherent goodness that resided within me. Through meditation, I began to peel back the layers of doubt and fear that had clouded my mind for so long. With each moment of stillness, I felt a sense of acceptance that I had never known before, a profound sense of peace that came not from external sources, but from within my own being. This realization was deeply aligned with the Buddha's teachings on non-self and impermanence. I learned that the identity I had built for myself, one defined by mistakes and failures, was not my true self. It was simply a temporary construct, shaped by thoughts and stories that I had accepted as truths. In reality, I was not my past. I was not my failures. I was not my mistakes. I was simply a human being, like everyone else, deserving of compassion, understanding, and love. As I continued to practice this form of self-love, I began to notice subtle shifts in my life. The harsh inner critic that had once dominated my thoughts started to quiet, replaced by a voice that was kinder, gentler, and more forgiving. I started to see myself through a lens of compassion, just as the Buddha encourages us to see all beings, with love, patience, and understanding. I realized that just as I extended compassion to others in their suffering, I too was worthy of that same compassion. This practice of self-love became the foundation for everything else in my life. It was not about achieving perfection, but about accepting myself, flaws and all, and recognizing that I was enough. Through the lens of self-compassion, I began to let go of the need for external validation. I no longer sought approval from others to feel worthy or loved. I learned to fill my own cup first, trusting that by doing so, I could share that love with others in a more authentic way. I remember that day so clearly, the day I realized that the love I had been searching for was already inside me. It wasn't something I had to earn or seek out. It was simply waiting for me to acknowledge it, to accept it, and to allow it to flow freely. Since then, that warm, golden light has remained with me. A constant reminder that I am enough, just as I am. This journey, this practice of self-love, has been the most transformative experience of my life. It has allowed me to reconnect with my true self, the self that is whole, complete, and worthy of all the love the universe has to offer. The Buddha's teachings have guided me toward a profound truth: the path to love begins within. And as I continue on this journey, I know that love will always be my companion, shining from within, radiating outward, and touching everything I encounter. The importance of relaxation and breathwork. Before we can fully embrace self-love, it is essential to create the space for it within ourselves. And the most effective way to do this is through relaxation and conscious breathwork. The Buddha, in his profound wisdom, often spoke of the importance of mindful breathing as a tool for calming the restless mind. In his teachings, he encouraged his followers to breathe with awareness, to return to the present moment, and to recognize that peace is not something to be found outside of ourselves, it resides within. When we take the time to breathe deeply and mindfully, we offer our body and mind the gift of stillness. The busy chatter of our thoughts often pulls us away from the present moment, leading to anxiety, worry, and stress. Whether we are ruminating on past mistakes or worrying about an uncertain future, our minds are constantly caught in the cycle of thought. But through conscious breathing, we can interrupt this cycle, bringing ourselves back to the here and now, where peace and clarity reside. In my own practice, I have discovered the transformative power of mindful breathing. Even just 5 minutes of focused, deep breathing can create a profound shift in my emotional and mental state. It is as though with each breath, I am shedding the weight of past regrets and future worries, allowing myself to exist fully in the present moment. The simple act of breathing consciously calms the turbulent waves of the mind and brings me back to the peaceful center that exists within. The Buddha referred to this as the breath of mindfulness. By focusing on each inhale and exhale, we become more attuned to the rhythm of our body, which has a soothing effect on our nervous system. With each breath, we are not just inhaling air, we are inhaling the energy of the present moment, of being fully alive, and of embracing the peace that is always available to us. When we exhale, we let go of the tension and stress that we have accumulated over time. In this process, the mind gradually quiets, and our emotional landscape becomes calmer, clearer, and more receptive. This practice of mindful breathing is the gateway to self-compassion. The more we focus on our breath, the more we create the space for love and understanding to emerge naturally. When the mind is calm, we are no longer distracted by self-judgment or criticism. Instead, we are able to connect more deeply with the truth of who we are, worthy of love, care, and compassion. Just as the Buddha taught, when we cultivate mindfulness and relaxation, we become more present to our own needs, more open to nurturing ourselves with kindness and gentleness. I've found that the peace that follows a simple breathing practice is not just temporary. It lingers, In those moments of stillness, I am reminded that the peace I seek is always within me. The Buddha's teachings on the impermanence of life also remind us that nothing, including our stress, worries, or even our negative thoughts, lasts forever. By returning to the present moment through mindful breathing, we can tap into that inner peace, knowing that it is always available, always waiting for us to reconnect. It is through practices like these, mindful breathing and relaxation, that we create the foundation for deeper self-love. When we take the time to calm the mind and relax the body, we are making space for the love and compassion that are our birthright. These practices allow us to step out of the constant noise of the world and into the quiet wisdom of our own hearts. They help us recognize that we do not need to chase love, approval, or validation from outside sources. Everything we need, including the ability to love ourselves deeply and unconditionally, is already within us. The Buddha's teachings on mindfulness and relaxation remind us that peace begins from within. And when we take the time to nurture this inner peace, we unlock the door to greater self-compassion, self-love, and ultimately, a more fulfilling life. Just as a seed needs time, water, and nurturing to grow, our practice of mindful breathing helps the seed of self-love to blossom within us. It is through these small but powerful acts of kindness to ourselves that we are able to build a life grounded in peace, joy, and deep connection with our true nature. The practice of self-compassion. In Buddhism, compassion is often described as the highest form of love, transcending the boundaries of self and other. It is a quality that should not only be directed outward, toward others, but also inward, toward ourselves. In fact, the Buddha taught that true compassion begins with the self. Only when we are able to offer ourselves compassion can we truly extend it to others in an authentic and meaningful way. Self-compassion is the practice of embracing all that we are, our flaws, our pain, our struggles, as part of the human experience. Recognizing that we are deserving of love and kindness, just as we extend it to others. In the video, the concept of self-compassion is highlighted as a crucial foundation for healing. It is not merely about kindness in the abstract sense, but about actively choosing to accept ourselves, even in our moments of difficulty. This is a deeply transformative practice because, in our fast-paced and often judgmental world, it's easy to forget that we are allowed to be human. We are allowed to make mistakes, to experience pain, and to have imperfections. And through self-compassion, we come to understand that these very aspects are not something to be ashamed of, but rather, part of the rich tapestry of our existence. I recall a time in my life when I struggled profoundly with feelings of unworthiness. These feelings were rooted in past experiences, and I carried them like an invisible weight, believing that I was somehow inadequate or not good enough. I would judge myself harshly, constantly measuring my worth against an ideal I could never seem to reach. I would look at others and think they were more deserving of love, success, or happiness. I felt disconnected from myself, as if I were an outsider looking in on my own life. It was during this time that I turned to the teachings of Buddhism, seeking solace in the timeless wisdom it offers. One of the practices that had the most profound impact on me was loving-kindness meditation, or metta bhavana. This practice involves silently repeating phrases of goodwill and compassion, first directed toward oneself and then gradually extended to others. The beauty of metta lies in its simplicity. It doesn't ask for perfection or require us to change ourselves in any way. Instead, it offers a gentle invitation to love ourselves just as we are, in our present state, without judgment. At first, it felt difficult to offer kindness to myself. I was so accustomed to self-criticism that extending compassion to myself seemed foreign. But, with time and practice, I began to soften my internal dialogue. I started by saying simple phrases: may I be happy. May I be at peace. May I be free from suffering. It wasn't a grand gesture or a sudden epiphany. It was simply the act of offering my heart to myself in a way I had never done before. In the beginning, it felt awkward, even uncomfortable. My mind would resist, questioning whether I was truly worthy of such kindness. But as I continued the practice, something began to shift. Slowly, the harsh judgments and negative thoughts that I had carried for so long started to dissolve. I began to feel a warmth, a quiet sense of acceptance growing within me. The more I practiced, the more I realized that I had been my own harshest critic, but also my own most loving healer. This simple act of offering loving kindness to myself became the first step toward healing, releasing the weight of self-judgment and embracing the truth of my inherent worth. Through this process, I learned that self-compassion is not about indulging ourselves or letting go of responsibility. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, the fact that we all face struggles, doubts, and suffering. We are not isolated in our pain, it is part of the universal experience of being human. When we offer ourselves compassion, we are acknowledging that we are deserving of kindness, even in our moments of vulnerability. We are not defined by our flaws or past mistakes, we are defined by our capacity for growth, healing, and love. This practice of self-compassion is one of the most transformative gifts we can give ourselves. It allows us to heal from the wounds we've carried for so long, to release the negative beliefs that keep us stuck, and to cultivate a deeper sense of peace and self-acceptance. As the Buddha taught, compassion is not a sign of weakness, but a powerful tool for liberation. When we embrace ourselves with the same compassion that we offer to others, we open the door to healing, growth, and ultimately, to living a life of true freedom. Through loving kindness meditation, I have come to understand that healing is not an event, but a process, a gradual unfolding of self-love and self-acceptance. Each moment spent in self-compassion is a step toward wholeness, a step toward reclaiming our innate worth. As we offer ourselves compassion, we remind ourselves that we are deserving of love, not because of what we do or don't do, but simply because we exist. This realization, simple as it may seem, is one of the most profound truths we can ever come to know, that we are worthy of love, exactly as we are. Embracing emotions and letting them flow. In many of the societies we live in today, we are often taught to suppress our emotions, especially the so-called negative ones. Feelings like sadness, anger, fear, and frustration are typically seen as signs of weakness or something to be avoided. We may be told to stay positive, don't cry, or just let it go. The general belief is that these emotions are obstacles to happiness and inner peace, and so we try to hide them or push them down, often without realizing the toll this takes on our emotional well-being. However, Buddhism offers a radically different perspective. The Buddha taught us that emotions are not inherently good or bad, they are simply energy in motion, fluctuating forces that arise in our minds due to various causes and conditions. According to Buddhist teachings, it is not the emotions themselves that cause suffering, but our attachment to them, our resistance to feeling them fully. This is the essence of the Buddhist practice of mindfulness, acknowledging emotions as they arise, without judgment or attachment, and allowing them to move through us rather than clinging to them or trying to push them away. Emotions, like clouds in the sky, are transient. They arise, they stay for a while, and then they pass. This is one of the core teachings of impermanence, anicca. In Buddhism, everything in life is temporary, including our emotions. When we allow ourselves to feel the full spectrum of our emotions, without resisting them or suppressing them, we create space for healing and transformation. Rather than being overwhelmed or controlled by our emotions, we learn to be with them in a more balanced and mindful way. I recall a time when I found myself facing a particularly challenging situation, a personal loss that triggered deep sadness and anger. In the past, I might have tried to push these feelings away, thinking that by suppressing them, I could somehow avoid the pain. But through my practice of mindfulness and the teachings of the Buddha, I learned to approach my emotions differently. Instead of running from them or denying them, I chose to simply be with them. I allowed myself to fully feel the sadness as it washed over me, the anger that arose in response to injustice, the grief that seemed overwhelming. At first, this felt uncomfortable. I had spent so much of my life avoiding difficult emotions that confronting them head-on was unfamiliar. But as I stayed present with these feelings, I noticed that something began to shift. The sadness, although still painful, became more manageable. The anger, although still intense, started to lose its grip on me. I wasn't trying to push the emotions away, but rather, I was giving myself permission to feel them deeply. I observed them without attachment, recognizing that they were just emotions, temporary, passing states of mind. Through this process, I learned that emotions are not something to fear. They are not permanent. They are simply messages, guides pointing us toward areas in our lives where healing may be needed. For example, sadness may arise when we experience loss or unmet desires, showing us where our hearts need compassion. Anger may arise when we feel wronged or powerless, reminding us of boundaries that need to be honored. Fear may arise when we face uncertainty, calling us to trust ourselves in the process of life. In this way, emotions become valuable signals, indicating where we need to look more closely, where we need to heal, grow, or let go. The Buddha's teachings on the Four Noble Truths show us that suffering is an inherent part of the human condition. But he also offers the antidote to suffering, the path of awareness, mindfulness, and letting go. Emotions are an integral part of this process. When we learn to embrace our emotions instead of pushing them away, we free ourselves from their grip. We become more emotionally resilient and better able to navigate the ups and downs of life. One of the most profound realizations I had during this process was that our emotions, when fully felt and acknowledged, don't have to define us. They don't have to determine our actions or our peace of mind. By observing them, without judgment or attachment, we can understand their impermanence. We begin to realize that while we may feel sadness or anger in a moment, those emotions do not need to control us or our lives. We can let them come, let them go, and continue to move forward with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. This practice of embracing emotions is not about indulging in them or allowing them to overwhelm us. Rather, it's about accepting them as part of the human experience and understanding that they are temporary, like passing clouds in a vast sky. We do not need to grasp at them or hold on to them, but we can allow them to flow naturally, just as we would with any other passing sensation. In my own life, this practice has been transformative. I have learned to approach my emotions with curiosity and compassion, rather than fear or resistance. I have learned that when I allow myself to feel fully, I can let go of the stories I have attached to my emotions, the narratives of this is who I am, or this will never pass. And in doing so, I've experienced a deeper sense of peace, knowing that I am not defined by any single emotional experience, but by my ability to observe and learn from them with mindfulness and compassion. In the end, embracing emotions in this way is a form of liberation. It is freedom from the tyranny of avoidance, resistance, and attachment. It is the freedom to live fully, without being overwhelmed by our feelings, but also without denying them. It is the freedom to be present with ourselves, in every emotional state, and to trust that all emotions, like all things, will eventually pass. Through this practice, we can cultivate a deeper sense of inner peace and emotional resilience that supports us through all the challenges and joys of life. Letting go and surrender. One of the most profound and transformative teachings of Buddhism is the principle of non-attachment. In our everyday lives, we often find ourselves clinging to things, whether they are memories of past hurts, unresolved fears, unfulfilled expectations, or even certain outcomes we desperately wish for. We grasp onto these things tightly, thinking that holding on will protect us or give us control over our lives. But in doing so, we create suffering for ourselves. The Buddha, in his wisdom, taught that attachment is the root of suffering, and the path to liberation is found in the practice of letting go. The idea of letting go is not about being passive or indifferent. It does not mean that we abandon our responsibilities, or that we give up on our dreams and desires. Rather, letting go is about releasing our tight grip on things that no longer serve us, things that we cannot control or change. It is the practice of surrendering to the flow of life, trusting that the universe, or the Buddha's teachings, will guide us in ways that are ultimately for our highest good. It is a process of allowing life to unfold without resisting or trying to control it. I recall a period in my life when I was holding on to deep resentment toward someone. This person had wronged me, and I felt justified in my anger. My mind replayed the situation over and over, each time reinforcing the narrative of betrayal and hurt. I felt that my anger was a way of protecting myself, a shield that would keep me safe from being hurt again. But in time, I realized that holding on to this resentment was not protecting me, it was poisoning me. My thoughts were consumed by anger. My heart was heavy with bitterness, and I was not at peace. It was through the practice of mindfulness and reflection, as taught in Buddhism, that I came to understand the truth about holding on to negative emotions. The Buddha spoke of dukkha, the dissatisfaction and suffering that arise from clinging to things, whether they are people, experiences, or outcomes. I began to recognize that my attachment to anger and resentment was a form of clinging. I was not allowing myself to move forward or find peace because I was anchored to the past. This realization led me to the practice of forgiveness, not as a favor to the other person, but as a gift to myself. In the beginning, forgiveness felt impossible. My ego told me that I was right to be angry, that I deserved justice, that I was justified in my feelings. But slowly, through meditation and contemplation on the Buddha's teachings of loving kindness and compassion, I began to soften my heart. I reminded myself that we are all human, that we all make mistakes, and that clinging to my resentment was only prolonging my suffering. Forgiveness, I discovered, is not about forgetting or excusing harmful actions. It is about releasing the emotional weight that we carry. It is about letting go of the need to control the outcome and surrendering to the wisdom that life unfolds as it is meant to. As I practiced forgiveness, I found that the emotional burden I had been carrying began to lighten. The weight of my anger and resentment lifted, and in its place, I felt a sense of freedom and relief. But the most profound shift came when I realized that letting go of resentment was not just an act of compassion toward the other person, but also an act of compassion toward myself. By holding on to anger, I was only hurting myself. In letting go, I created space for peace, for healing, and for a renewed sense of joy. The Buddha teaches that compassion begins with ourselves, and I began to understand that by forgiving others, I was also forgiving myself. Letting go and surrendering is not a one-time event. It is a continual practice, a daily reminder to release our attachments, to loosen the grip of our expectations, and to trust that life will unfold in its own time. It is about trusting that the universe, or the Buddha's teachings, will guide us toward the right path, even when we cannot see the way clearly. In the end, The practice of non-attachment is not about avoiding pain or hardship. It is about accepting that suffering is a part of life, but that we do not need to carry it with us. By letting go of what no longer serves us, we free ourselves from the chains of the past, from the burdens of unhealed wounds, and from the endless cycle of craving and aversion. When we surrender to the present moment, we open ourselves to the possibility of peace and joy, which are always available to us if we allow them to arise naturally. In my journey, I've learned that letting go is a form of self-love. It is the act of caring for ourselves by not holding on to what hurts, by not allowing negative emotions to dominate our lives. It is the practice of trust in the teachings of the Buddha, trust in the natural flow of life, and trust in our own ability to heal and grow. And in this surrender, we find true freedom, the freedom to live without the weight of past burdens, the freedom to embrace life as it is, and the freedom to love ourselves and others without attachment or condition. Gratitude and embracing the present. Gratitude, in its purest form, is an expression of self-love and an affirmation of our inherent worthiness to experience the goodness of life. It is a practice that allows us to shift our focus from what we lack to what we already have. Through the lens of gratitude, we come to see that life, even with its challenges and obstacles, is filled with abundant blessings. When we cultivate a mindset of gratitude, we begin to align ourselves with the flow of the universe, recognizing that every moment, every experience, and every encounter has something to offer us. In Buddhism, gratitude is more than just a fleeting feeling of appreciation. It is a way of being, an attitude that reflects an understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. The Buddha taught that everything we encounter is the result of countless causes and conditions. Nothing arises in isolation. Our lives are shaped by the kindness of others, the beauty of nature, and the countless small miracles that unfold in each day. When we practice gratitude, we acknowledge this interconnectedness and the many ways in which we are supported by the universe. I recall a time in my life when I faced a deep personal struggle. I was overwhelmed by feelings of sadness, frustration, and helplessness. The weight of my challenges seemed unbearable, and I often found myself questioning the purpose of it all. During this period, it was easy for me to focus on the things that were going wrong, the mistakes I had made, the relationships that had fallen apart, and the dreams that seemed out of reach. It was as if I had become trapped in a cycle of negativity, unable to see beyond my own suffering. But then, I began to turn to the practice of gratitude. It was not a grand gesture, nor was it something that happened overnight. I started by acknowledging the small, simple things that I had previously taken for granted. I would sit quietly for a moment and reflect on the kindness of a friend who reached out to check on me, the warmth of the sun on my face during a morning walk, or the soothing sound of rain on the roof. In those moments of stillness, I began to realize that even in the midst of hardship, there were countless things in my life that deserved my gratitude. Gradually, I learned to see each challenge as an opportunity for growth. In Buddhism, we are taught that suffering is a natural part of the human experience, and that it is through our suffering that we find the potential for transformation. When we embrace our difficulties with a sense of gratitude, we open ourselves to the lessons they have to offer. Every obstacle becomes a stepping stone on the path to wisdom, compassion, and self-understanding. As I shifted my perspective, I began to see that the very things I had once viewed as setbacks were, in fact, moments of learning and growth. One of the most profound shifts came when I realized that gratitude is not just about feeling thankful for the good things in life, it is also about embracing the present moment as it is, without judgment or resistance. The Buddha's teachings on mindfulness encourage us to fully inhabit each moment, whether it is filled with joy or sorrow. By practicing mindfulness and gratitude together, we begin to accept life as it comes. With all its imperfections and uncertainties, we come to understand that every moment is a gift, even when it doesn't meet our expectations or desires. Through this practice, I found solace in the smallest things. It wasn't just the grand moments of happiness or success that I began to appreciate, it was the quiet, everyday experiences that became the most meaningful. A kind word from a friend, the beauty of a sunset, the comfort of a warm cup of tea, these were all reminders of the kindness and abundance that surrounded me. By acknowledging these blessings, I started to heal many of the wounds I had carried for so long. My suffering, while still present, no longer dominated my life. It became a part of the tapestry of my experience, woven alongside the moments of joy and peace. Gratitude also helped me to see the interconnectedness of all beings. The Buddha teaches that all things are interdependent, that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply connected to it. When we express gratitude, we honor this connection. We recognize that the kindness we receive is not just a random occurrence, but a reflection of the compassion and generosity that exists within the world. In turn, we are inspired to extend that same kindness to others, creating a cycle of giving and receiving that nourishes both ourselves and those around us. Ultimately, the practice of gratitude is about embracing the present moment with an open heart. It is about letting go of the past, not dwelling on what has been lost or what could have been, and instead fully engaging with the here and now. As the Buddha taught, life is fleeting, and every moment is precious. By cultivating gratitude, we learn to cherish each moment, to see the beauty in the simplest of things, and to find joy in the midst of our challenges. In the end, gratitude is not just a practice, it is a way of living. It is the lens through which we see the world, and it shapes the way we experience life. By embracing gratitude, we not only acknowledge the blessings we have, but we also become more attuned to the flow of life itself. We come to understand that, no matter what difficulties we face, there's always something to be thankful for. And in this gratitude, we find the peace and healing that our hearts so deeply long for. Affirmations and cultivating self-worth. Affirmations are more than just words we repeat to ourselves, they are powerful tools that can shift the foundation of our thoughts, emotions, and ultimately, our lives. At the heart of Buddhist teachings is the profound understanding that our mind shapes our reality. The Buddha often spoke of the importance of cultivating a right view, an awareness rooted in truth, wisdom, and self-compassion. Our thoughts are not just fleeting impulses, but the seeds that blossom into our experiences. This is why affirmations, when practiced mindfully and with intention, become not just a tool for personal growth, but a form of spiritual practice in itself. In Buddhism, the concept of self-worth is not about affirming an egoic sense of superiority, but about recognizing our inherent worth as human beings who are deserving of love, kindness, and peace. The Buddha taught that every being has the potential for enlightenment, and this potential exists in all of us, no matter our circumstances. Self-worth, in this context, is the recognition of our innate Buddha nature, our intrinsic goodness and capacity for love, compassion, and wisdom. Affirmations are, in many ways, a way of aligning our minds with this deeper truth. They offer us the opportunity to reshape the narrative we tell ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, and what we are capable of achieving. In a world that often reinforces limiting beliefs about our value, our worth, and our place in the world, affirmations act as a counterbalance, offering a new perspective rooted in love and compassion. The power of words and the mind. In Buddhist teachings, words hold immense power. The Buddha often emphasized the significance of right speech, one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. Words have the power to heal or to harm, to build up or to break down. They are not just sounds that come from our mouths, they carry energy and intention. When we speak affirmations, we are not just repeating words, we are sending a message to our subconscious mind, instructing it to focus on what is true, beneficial, and aligned with our highest good. Affirmations, when practiced with mindfulness and intention, can rewire the brain. This concept is supported by modern neuroscience, which has shown that the brain is highly malleable. And with repeated practice, we can change neural pathways and reprogram our thinking. Just as the Buddha taught that mindfulness can help us break free from the cycle of suffering and ignorance, affirmations help us break free from negative thought patterns that limit our potential and prevent us from fully embracing our worth. In Buddhism, it is said that the mind is like a garden, and our thoughts are the seeds we plant. If we cultivate seeds of negativity, doubt, and fear, we will grow a garden full of weeds that choke the beauty of our lives. But when we plant seeds of positivity, love, and self-compassion, we cultivate a mind that is clear, peaceful, and full of possibility. Affirmations are the tools we use to plant these seeds of positivity and self-worth. Affirmations for self-worth in a Buddhist context. The practice of affirmations in the Buddhist context involves aligning ourselves with the truth of our inner nature. Below are a few affirmations that resonate deeply with Buddhist teachings, reflecting not only the importance of self-love and self-worth but also the deep connection to all beings in the universe. I am worthy of love, care, and attention. This affirmation is rooted in the understanding that all beings, including ourselves, are deserving of love and compassion. In Buddhism, loving kindness, metta, is one of the central practices, and it begins with ourselves. We are often taught to show compassion to others, but the first step in this journey is to direct that love and care inward. By repeating this affirmation, we remind ourselves that we are worthy of the same kindness, respect, and care that we extend to others. It is not a matter of ego, but of recognizing our inherent dignity as human beings. The Buddha teaches that every sentient being is worthy of love, regardless of past actions or perceived flaws. Our worth is not based on external conditions or achievements, but on our capacity for compassion, wisdom, and kindness. When we affirm that we are worthy of love, we are affirming our connection to all beings, recognizing that we, too, have the potential to cultivate love and peace in our hearts. I release the past and embrace the present moment. This affirmation is an invitation to let go of the burdens of the past, whether they are old regrets, mistakes, or hurts, and to fully embrace the present moment. In Buddhism, one of the core teachings is the impermanence of all things, anicca. Everything in life is in a constant state of flux, including our emotions and experiences. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we cling to the past or fear the future. By releasing the past, we free ourselves from the weight of guilt, shame, and unhealed wounds. When we embrace the present moment, we are living in harmony with the truth of impermanence, accepting that all things, both the pleasant and the unpleasant, are transient. This moment is all we truly have. And by embracing it, we open ourselves to the fullness of life as it is. Affirming the release of the past is an act of surrender, letting go of attachments to how things should have been and trusting that the present moment holds all that we need. It is a reminder to practice mindfulness and to fully experience life as it unfolds, without judgment or resistance. I trust myself and honor my needs. This affirmation reflects a deep recognition of our inner wisdom and intuition. In Buddhism, the concept of right view teaches us to trust in our ability to discern truth, even in the face of confusion or doubt. This affirmation acknowledges our inherent wisdom and the importance of honoring our own needs, desires, and boundaries. The Buddha taught that we are each responsible for our own happiness and liberation. while external circumstances and relationships can support us on our journey. The true power to heal and transform lies within ourselves. Trusting ourselves is not about arrogance or self-reliance, but about recognizing that we are worthy of the peace, joy, and love that we seek. Honoring our needs is an act of self-compassion. It is a way of affirming that our emotions, desires, and well-being matter. It is an invitation to listen deeply to ourselves, to discern what is true and nourishing for our hearts, and to act in alignment with that truth. In doing so, we cultivate a life that is authentic, balanced, and in harmony with our true nature. Reprogramming the mind with affirmations. In Buddhism, mindfulness is the key to awareness and transformation. When we repeat affirmations, we are essentially practicing mindfulness of our thoughts and emotions. Each time we repeat an affirmation, we become more aware of our inner dialogue, allowing us to notice when negative thoughts arise and gently replace them with more empowering ones. It is important to remember that affirmations are not about forcing ourselves to believe something we do not yet believe. They are a practice of gently guiding the mind toward a new way of seeing ourselves and the world. Just as the Buddha taught that the path to enlightenment is gradual, the journey of reprogramming the mind with affirmations is one of patience, persistence, and self-compassion. The process of reprogramming is not immediate, and it requires consistent practice. Over time, the affirmations we repeat become embedded in our subconscious, and our thoughts, behaviors, and actions begin to reflect this new belief system. We start to see ourselves not through the lens of past mistakes or limiting beliefs, but through the eyes of love, wisdom, and compassion. Conclusion: affirmations as a Buddhist practice. In conclusion, affirmations are not merely a tool for personal development, they are a way to cultivate a right view, aligning ourselves with the truth of our innate worth and potential. Through affirmations, we can break free from the cycle of negative thinking and reconnect with our inherent goodness, as taught by the Buddha. By repeating affirmations like "I am worthy of love, care, and attention," "I release the past and embrace the present moment," and "I trust myself and honor my needs," we create new neural pathways that support a life of peace, love, and wisdom. Affirmations are not just words, they are seeds that we plant in the fertile soil of our minds. With consistent practice, these seeds will grow into a beautiful garden of self-compassion, self-worth, and liberation. Just as the Buddha showed us the path to awakening, affirmations can guide us to awaken to the truth of our own hearts and minds, allowing us to live fully and authentically in alignment with our deepest nature. Conclusion: the journey of self-love. The journey towards self-love is not a straight line, it is a path that weaves through the complexities of our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. It is a journey that requires patience, understanding, and, above all, compassion for ourselves as we navigate the challenges of life and the imperfections of being human. In the same way that the Buddha's teachings are not a quick fix but a lifelong path to enlightenment, self-love is an ongoing practice that unfolds gradually, deepening as we cultivate awareness and presence in our lives. Buddhism teaches that all beings possess the potential for wisdom, compassion, and peace. And this potential is no different when it comes to ourselves. Self-love is not rooted in narcissism or indulgence, it is about recognizing our inherent worth, accepting our flaws, and offering ourselves the same kindness we would extend to others. In the Buddha's view, true love begins with the love we give ourselves, a love that transcends attachment, judgment, and self-criticism. As we commit to nurturing ourselves, we open the door to profound inner peace and joy. These qualities, when cultivated, radiate outward, touching everything and everyone around us. The more we connect with our own hearts, the more we naturally begin to extend love and compassion to others. This is the transformative power of self-love. It is not a selfish act, but a deeply spiritual one. By healing ourselves, we contribute to the healing of the world. Just as the Buddha taught the middle way, the path of balance between extremes, self-love is not about becoming overly absorbed in oneself, but about finding harmony within. It is a practice of holding ourselves with tenderness and acceptance, while also remaining open to growth and transformation. As we journey along this path, we learn to let go of the burdens of self-doubt and fear. And in their place, we cultivate a deep sense of peace that radiates from within. In the end, the journey of self-love is not about reaching a final destination, but about embracing each moment with open-hearted awareness. It is a lifelong practice, one that leads to deeper wisdom, greater compassion, and a more authentic connection to ourselves and the world around us. Personal takeaway and final thoughts. In conclusion, this practice of self-love is transformative, not only for our personal healing but for our ability to share love with others. By embracing our worth, accepting our emotions, and nurturing ourselves, we align with our highest potential. In Buddhism, we are reminded that we are already complete. And through self-compassion, we realize that love is not something to seek, it is something we already are. This meditation is just one of many tools available to us on our journey to deeper self-love. Whether through mindfulness, affirmations, or simply pausing to breathe, we have the power to cultivate a life of peace, joy, and connection.